last night it was pretty amazing to see the people that were in the gallery. January Littlejohn is one of those people. When her 13-year-old daughter was captured by the idea that she was born in the wrong body instead of helping her learn to love who she was, her school decided to affirm her self-hate and said, you know what? You hate being a girl? You're a boy. That's better. You could be a boy. The school helped her change her pronouns, pick new bathrooms, even decide if she wanted to sleep with boys on overnight trips, all without parental consent. It's evil, predatory, and Mom, January, took him to court to fight it. Until now, moms like her were alone in the fight. And most of us, if you had a problem like this, you didn't know what to do. Not anymore. America is finally coming to her senses, Trump leading the way. She was in the gallery last night. She's about to catch her plane back home in Florida, and she joins us now. January, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Glenn.
You bet. You're a mental health counselor, right? Stay-at-home mom, and you have mental health background. So you had to be shocked that people in the school, people in your own field, just adopted this transgender ideology and ran with it like it was, of course, that's what it is. Of course, this is all common knowledge. Were you as shocked as the rest of us were?
Well, absolutely, Glenn. And you have to remember, I think America has short-term memory sometimes. This was back in 2020. We did not know this was happening. I was volunteer of the year at the middle school where they socially transitioned my daughter. And so I had no idea that not only had my field, the school system, the medical field, even our judicial branch, I had no idea I had been infiltrated by this radical ideology. And to clarify something, at the time of the social transition plan that they did with my daughter, without our knowledge or consent, she was identifying as non-binary. And so her identity changed 4 times over 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
These kids, like my daughter, they are confused, and they are looking to the adults in their life to tell them the truth and help make sense of their confusion.
How did you how'd you find out?
My daughter told me. We have a very close relationship. So my husband and I, we knew our daughter was struggling. But at that time, Abigail Schreier's book had not come out. So there was very little information about the social contagion that had been bubbling for a couple of years at that point.
I am so concerned about what has been done to our medical schools, what's been done to medicine just in the last 5 years. It's very frightening. You get the new doctors buying into all of this stuff, thinking like this, indoctrinated on this. You have a generation of doctors that are really dangerous. Can we change that?
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. And that's why the work that Do No Harm is so important, what they're doing, because we have to re-educate. We have to root this ideology out of our institutions, because the bottom line is the U.S. is now an outlier in how we are treating this mental health issue. This is a mental health issue, Glenn, that has been normalized, promoted, and even celebrated. My daughter was told she was brave, Glenn, and she wanted to cut her breast off at age 13. That is unfathomable, what they were doing. And to be fair, it was very similar to when I used to treat clients with anorexia. There are so many parallels to the disassociation these girls feel and go through, and the same type of disassociation with an eating disorder. And it was heartbreaking, and it felt like we were in the twilight zone because my husband and I were the only ones in our daughter's life trying to protect her from this irreversible medical pathway that this school put her on.
So what was it because like when people had anorexia, when that was a really big thing, immediately everybody was like, it's the magazines, it's the TV shows, it's the images that we're showing girls that's unreasonable. And so there was something that caused that. This time they just said, no, it's normal to feel that way. When it was never normal to feel that way, it's normal to feel that way, and let's go. What was the force behind that? How did that happen?
Yeah, Glenn, a lot of people think that this came out of the blue. That is just not the case. Dr. Ryan Anderson was trying to sound the alarm back in 2018 for his book that was canceled, When Harry Became Sally. And he lays out how exactly this ideology infiltrated our institutions. But what you have to remember is when I was trained as a mental health profession, this was seen as a mental health issue. It was extraordinarily rare. And this notion of people having a, quote, gender identity that is separate from their sex, that they choose to be a boy, girl, neither or both, which is what is being taught to our children now, that was non-existent. So this has all been laid out for our children. They are creating confusion where no previous confusion were to have occurred, and this is not happening organically. So again, we have to inoculate our children from this insidious ideology and the lies of gender identity itself.
Doctors will say, experts will say, if your child comes home and says that, just embrace it because they're going to kill themselves if they don't, which is just the scariest thing. And as parents who never dealt with anything like this before, we just don't know what to do. We accept love on our children and make sure we have a relationship where they're talking to us. What do you do as a parent?
Well, first and foremost, you have to understand that that is a lie. There is no evidence. Even WPATH doctors admit there is no evidence. Chase Stranglio admitted in front of the Supreme Court in this committee oral hearing, there is no evidence these children will commit suicide if not immediately affirmed or social or medically transition. In fact, the research shows, Glenn, that the vast majority of these kids will desist just like my daughter did. They will come to feel comfortable in the body they were born in if you do not socially or medically transition them. Again, this is a mental health issue, and it is unbelievable that doctors were cutting the breast off of girls as young as 12 years old in our country and sterilizing children, many of whom had co-occurring significant mental health issues, including autism.
I will tell you that Trump has signed an executive order saying there are only two genders. Never thought that was necessary. But he said something last night that only half of the people applauded for. Democrats didn't applaud for this at all, which, go back 5 years, and that would have been insane to not applaud. But look at how different we are just because of his election. Listen to what he said last night.
And our message to every child in America is that you are perfect exactly the way God made you.
What did that feel like to you when the president said that?
It felt incredible. It felt like reality and sanity are returning to our great nation. And I am just so incredibly grateful to President Trump and his administration for the steps that they are taking. But we know these executive orders alone are a great start, but will not end this war on our children.
Were you surprised when you got the call from the White House? How did that happen? How do you get invited to that?
I was very surprised, Glenn. I am a stay-at-home mom. I literally went from being a door holder, just like I do every week, to getting on a plane to Washington, D.C. and heading to the White House. It still feels a bit surreal. And, to be honest, as exciting as it was, I was standing there not just on behalf of what my family went through, but on behalf of all families and the irreversible harm they have experienced because of this insidious ideology. So I felt the weight and the gravity, because I still get calls weekly from parents waking up to this nightmare whose children have been captured weekly. And I'm sure you're aware, Glenn, we have states now that are taking children from loving parents.
I know.
Simply because they will not affirm this lie. So we are still in crisis in this country, and President Trump and their administration are taking incredible steps, but we have much work to be done.
Do you have any faith that Congress will codify any of this? I mean, he's talking about criminalizing sex change operations on children, which, again, is insane that you would have to do that, but we do. But the more insane thing is, I think that may not pass because of, some people in Congress. I would hope it would get every Republican vote, but it would probably not get a single Democrat vote. Is that going to happen? Do you think?
Well, Well, if you saw the vote the other day, not one Democrat voted to protect girls' sports. That is unacceptable.
Nuts.
So what I think needs to happen is we have lawsuits that are working their way through the court system. And unfortunately, these things take time.
Yeah.
My lawsuit against the school district is still in litigation. We're in the appeals phase. But what I think needs to happen is we need to get down to the merits of these interventions themselves, because even scrutiny at the Supreme Court is really just about states' rights and do they have a constitutional right to restrict these interventions on children. Yes. We have to get to where we are arguing the actual merits of these interventions. And we know from evidence and systematic reviews that the risks far outweigh the benefits. Not that we need evidence to tell us that sterilizing children before they have the ability and maturity to consent to this is a bad idea.
You know, I'm sorry, I hate to bring this up again, but I'm fascinated when a regular person, because I felt this the first time I went to the White House, and every time I go to the White House, it's a surreal experience. When you got to Washington, they take you to the White House. Do you all, the people in the gallery that were invited, do you all meet? And is it the First Lady that welcomes you? What happens?
So we did, and I'm sure you saw last night, there was such a diverse amount of people from all walks of life, Lynn, and it was really incredible. And many of them had truly tragic stories. But I truly feel that God is using their pain for purpose, just like God did for my family. And it was a really amazing experience. You know, that little boy DJ that the Democrats just were so ugly about. That little boy brought so much joy, and he hugged every single person he encountered. That is what the American spirit is about. His father could not have been more proud. And for the Democrats to say that that was somehow negative is just ridiculous. All they're doing is playing politics. It was a beautiful evening, and I was so proud to be there.
Mrs. Trump, the First Lady, she plays a role in turning this around, doesn't she? Isn't she involved in this?
Well, both her and the Second Lady. You know, I had a chance to sit near both of them last night. That was an extraordinary honor I never thought I would have. And they were so kind, down to earth, and you can just tell they love their families. This administration is all about restoring the American family, putting a family-first agenda, and I could not be more happy and proud to be a part of that.
You know, we all have our role to play, and some people, it's a bigger role than others, but everybody has a role to play. We're all born for a reason, and we were born perfect with everything that we need, from God to be able to accomplish those things. But it takes courage to stand up, and I can't thank you enough, January, for the courage that you and your family have shown and the grace that you have shown to stand up and change the world. Thank you, January.
Well, thank you, Glenn. If I could just say for any parents struggling with this issue, please go to our parent resource page at donoharmmedicine.org. You are not alone, and there is hope. You can parent your child on the other side of this confusion. God bless you.
God bless you. They represent physicians, nurses, medical students, patients, policymakers, everybody, anybody that can keep them focused on keeping identity politics out of our medical education, our research, and our clinical practice and out of our schools. It's donoharmmedicine.org, and you can follow at January Do No Harm. Follow January on X at January Do No Harm.